It's been such a joy each week to pick up the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man and to be treated to the next entry in the Dark Web saga, which sees X-Men villain Madeline Pryor, also known as the Goblin Queen, team up with Spider-Man villain benreilly, now known as Chasm, to stage an assault over on New York City with the kind of hell dimension of Limbo. However, there was a pivotal moment over in Dark Web X-Men that changed kind of the trajectory of the Dark Web crossover. So while we have one half of Dark Web now narratively resolved, the other half still lingers. My name is Erick, and today let's go ahead and dive into the latest chapter of Marvel's Dark Web crossover with The Amazing Spider-Man number 18. But before we get deeper into the video, I want to go ahead and encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button if you enjoy our content. Next up, I want to read off Marvel's solicitation text introducing this latest entry into The Amazing Spider-Man. As if the normal, run-of-the-mill demons of Limbo weren't enough, Spider-Man finds himself facing a small army of demonized versions of his rogues gallery. Can he make it home to stop Chasm and the Goblin Queen? And next up, I want to go ahead and share the creative team behind this issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. This one is written by Zeb Wells. We have art illustrated from penciler Ed McGuinness, inks from Cliff Rathburn. We have colors in the issue from Marcio Menyz and Erick Arciniega. The letters in the issue are from Joe Caramagna, and the cover is drawn by John Romita Jr., Scott Hanna, and Romulo Fajardo Jr. I actually want to go ahead and show off the cover for The Amazing Spider-Man number 18. I always like to start off these reviews by talking about some of the covers for the issue. I particularly like this one as we see kind of Spider-Man fighting off a version of his kind of rogues gallery that's been influenced by the dimension of Limbo, which is pretty interesting to check out. And I want to show off some of the incredibly intricate and detailed pencils over from artist Ed McGuinness in this issue. I really enjoy the way Ed McGuinness draws his characters, particularly the kind of X-Men characters as well, because this issue is part of the Dark Web crossover, servicing both the Spider-Man and the X-Men titles. So there's quite a few characters that McGuinness has to draw throughout this kind of chapter, including, current villains Chasm and hallowseve over in the Spider-Man universe. I love kind of the way that McGuinness draws the costume for, Madeline Pryor, so kind of excessively and really kind of accentuates the kind of crown that she's wearing over in the issue. Also, even though kind of the characters are so detailed throughout the story, I really appreciate McGuinness's attention to detail with his, character expressions and designs. Chasm doesn't have like a mouth that he's kind of emoting throughout the issue, but kind of the like effects of where his like eye trails are headed helps kind of sell some of his emotions throughout the issue, which I think does really help, not only from the inks from Cliff Rathburn, but also from some of the colors from Marcio Menyz and Erick Arciniega. I just really like how slick and kind of clean, this Spider-Man issue looks in particular, because some of the concepts that author Zeb Wells throws into the issue are very, very kind of heady and out there, as, Peter Parker in this issue is still kind of operating out of this cursed and twisted version of the Daily Bugle with his friends J. Jonah Jameson and Robbie Robertson that he worked in the Bugle with. So it's great to kind of, see that subplot continue alongside, this character that we were introduced to last issue of Rap, as well as these, insidious 6 characters as well. It's just so great that, this is like a dark fantasy event in Spider-Man. So we're getting kind of that dark fantasy approach, captured through kind of familiar but different sides of existing Spider-Man characters. So I just love the way that, writer Zeb Wells is kind of inverting the narrative here. Also, this issue was incredibly tense kind of right from the opening pages because even though Madeline has changed her perspective a little bit, there are not very many people that, agree with her, especially her kind of fellow dark web accomplices, Chasm, benreilly as well. I know there's a lot of friction between these characters right now and kind of getting that horrific feeling of watching somebody that you empathize with, like benreilly, make a bad decision is such an interesting concept. But you can't help feel bad for him. Yet he makes such bad decisions that go on to kind of inform his character and who he is. I really enjoyed how much the stakes of the issue kept increasing as we get further and further into the story. There is a massive kind of plot twist that even I wasn't expecting, even though kind of at this point you could definitely figure out that dark web is heading in this direction. Just the kind of extra effort that Zeb Wells and Ed McGuinness imbue into this story make it so that I'm incredibly interested to kind of see what happens next. And I think it really helps that even though this issue is filled with some really kind of dark and sad moments, that at least the final page, kind of brings our heroes of Spider-Man and the X-Men together so that they're kind of on the same page in the next part of this crossover, which I think is going to be a really important and kind of imperative decision to make. Also, I think we've covered this a little bit, but just the kind of politics between hallowseve, chasm, and the Goblin Queen in this issue really make it stand out. I feel like we have so much great characterization for Spider-Man, but also the villains as well. I always love stories that are able to kind of flesh out both perspectives. If I'm able to empathize with not only the hero, but the villain as well, I can get drawn into the story on a much deeper level. And I really think that, Zeb Wells, Ed McGuinness, John Romita Jr., the entire creative team, has really made this story have that strong sense of emotional stakes that really make it kind of stand out among other issues. So I think those are my thoughts on the latest chapter of the Amazing Spider-Man's Dark Web event. I'm still really loving this crossover. I think this crossover is moving at a very quick pace, and I really appreciate how we're kind of in the end game phase, which appears to be kind of on the final pages of this particular issue. I want to know from you, what do you think about this new approach to kind of Spider-Man as a dark fantasy concept? I would really love this character to go back to Limbo in the future, and I'm such kind of a big fan of taking kind of familiar Spider-Man heroes and imbuing them with magic sort of Limbo powers. It's almost interesting to kind of draw the comparison between this and DC's current Lazarus Planet event, which also sees kind of existing characters gain new powers. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Again, it was a pleasure checking in on the latest entry into the Dark Web saga. Thank you so much for checking out our content, and we're going to be back really soon with more excellent comic book videos. We'll see you soon. Bye.